started looking at consent agendas for school districts.
Yeah,
And that's how I came across all these travel requests for these school boards. Most of the requests were for clubs and students and teams, that kind of a thing, but they all find their own funding for that. What
right.
I thought was interesting were school board members and top administrative officials asking for permission to go on these trips on the taxpayer dime.
Right.
So I recently found a couple of your articles. How long have you been looking into uh, travel in general on the taxpayer dime?
Well, this is a subject that I've been familiar with for a long time because obviously when I worked for the Arizona School Boards Association, we put on conferences and we had board members and school staff come to those conferences. Certainly when I was there, I felt like we gave people good value for their money. We kept our prices low. It was in-state travel, so it wasn't very expensive. And we really tried to make sure that our content was right on point for what board members needed to know and was valuable to them. And I think people, followed through with that. We also tried to, by keeping our expenses low, we try to go to places that weren't too expensive, not too extravagant. A lot of times, even if we went to a really nice place, it was usually in the off season, so it wasn't as expensive to put on. And again, our conferences were priced in a way that we really didn't make money on it. I did see during that time that there were people going to board members and staff going to other conferences out of state. And in my time at ASBA, I went to plenty of out of state conferences, but there was always sort of a understanding that, we do work in public education. We are either working directly with tax dollars or indirectly with tax dollars. And we need to keep costs low and we need to be sensible about the professional development opportunities so that they're really on point and they're serving a purpose in our jobs. Frankly, what I've seen, and I've probably noticed it in the last 5 or 6 years, or maybe a little longer, just this drift from going to conferences that were directly on point for how to do the job, as opposed to, pursuing political ideology, furthering, diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives, networking opportunity based on identity, a lot of things like that, and out of state conferences and at conferences that were in very nice places. And looking at the agendas, I would see more and more. In fact, what they were doing was, less and less time was actually being spent on content that mattered for your job. And so, instead, what was being replaced was a lot of times for receptions and networking activities and things that might be of interest to you on your personal basis, but had nothing to do with what your role was in a school district. And so I think a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of those trips now are become that. Networking opportunities at very expensive places where not a lot of direct content is being taught, and it troubles me.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Is your current focus now mostly on where and what kind of conferences these people are going to? And what are some of your most recent investigations?
Yeah, there's a multitude of I think concerns here. One is the expense. How much is it? Are the public dollars, worth the bang for the buck? Second, what are they learning about? Because the content needs to be on point for the job, and it needs to be not subsidizing ideas. I think that the taxpayers don't necessarily support, as well as just the time on point where it's just not. They're not really focusing on content. It's networking opportunities. We have looked at 3 different, just in the last, actually 2 weeks, we've published 3 blog posts on different conferences that board members and staff have attended. The first one was in the Phoenix Elementary School District. There was a school board member who registered for something called the Local Progress Conference in Oakland, California. It was a 3-day conference. And if you looked at the agenda, of the 59 or 60 topics that were to be, discussed there, only 3 were education. And even those education pieces were clearly from an identity politics sort of perspective. So it was really a networking event for progressive activists. And so we called them out on it. We asked for public records, and as a result of our request for public records, the individual involved canceled his registration. So that didn't happen. And then subsequent to that, we discovered in the Creighton Elementary School District that there were, it was approved for the entire board and the entire administrative team to attend a California Association of School Black Educators Conference in Napa Valley. This was a 3-day event at a 5-star resort, the Meritage Resort and Spa, which its current room rate, which of course is off season, is $400 a night. And what was even more interesting is when you looked at the agenda for this conference, it included things like a 5-hour chairman's wine soiree at a winery. And then if you added up the entire content of the conference, 9 hours were spent on activity which you would get continuing education credit for. So that was things that were content that you probably could say, this is information that, whether you agree with it or not, is at least somewhat on point. But then there was like 23 hours spent on networking. So 9 hours of content, 23 hours of networking. And then the content itself was fairly objectionable. It was all very laden with very DEI-driven topics that I think, again, most folks would say is, well, that's probably not something that school board members and the school staff should take. So if that, in the Creighton situation, if all of the board and all the administrative team had gone to that conference, we don't know yet because we have public records requests to find out who went. But let's just say 10 of them went, 5 board members, 5 members of the administrative team. That's a $40,000 conference that was spent for one conference. And it's the California Association of Black School Educators. So it has a California focus, a California DEI focus. And I was just kind of interested, so, okay, well, maybe Creighton has a lot of, Black students, and maybe this is something that's a real key point of emphasis for them. And so looking up at their data on the AD website, their student population of Black students is 5%. So, it does raise the question of, is this on point at all? And then the third one that we just, published about was the Tolleson Union School Board for the last 2 years has had they're in Avondale, so it's their West Valley district. I think they have 7 or 8 high schools. They have had retreats at sort of 4-star resorts in the summer the last 2 years. In 2023, they went down to the JW Marriott Star Pass for 3 nights and had a conference down there, a board retreat for the administrators and the board members. And then 2024, they went up to the Sedona, the Bell Rock, Hilton Bell Rock, for another 3-day event. And in the 2024 event, which was just in June, the agenda did not say what they were going to discuss. They gave no meaningful way for the public to participate because the event was not recorded in any way. It wasn't streamed. There was no video of it. There was no audio of it. And so to me, it not only breaks the spirit of the open meeting law, it likely breaks the actual open meeting law. And the open meeting law, for anybody who's not, listening, is that, it's meant there to be one of our sunshine laws, just like public records law. It's intended to, allow the public to see the public's business out in the open, and allows the public to attend and to listen and to participate to the degree that the public body has defined it. So it's really important. And most districts do have retreats in the summertime. It's kind of a way to refocus kind of a way to maybe look at their strategic plan, maybe look at their goals for the year, maybe do some data diving in terms of how they're doing. But they do them in the district office where the cost is minimal and the public can attend and the public can have a chance to have a say. And it's all transparent. And most of the time it's, if you couldn't attend the meeting, you could watch it on YouTube later on and see what happened. So, but this one was clearly done to evade public scrutiny, to go to one of these 4-star resorts, spend a lot of money that they didn't have to spend. And it's very shady. And we called it out, and we called it out in a blog post. In addition to that, we also thought that, there's some 39 school districts, just in Maricopa County alone, that are going to be asking for, approval from voters for bonds and overrides this year, right? And so that's extra money that is not part of the state school funding formula, that voters are asked to tax themselves a little bit more to pay for certain things. And that's fine. If voters want to approve that, that's certainly up to them, and it's up to those districts to ask for it. But I think voters, it's fair for them to say, well, what's being done with the money that we have now? Is this district spending our money wisely? And if they're not spending our money wisely, maybe we ought to consider that when we decide to vote to give them more money.
I feel like my tax dollars take some fabulous trips. I really do.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing is there is Arizona school districts are a creature of the state. They're a creature of the legislature. They only have the authority that the legislature gives them, right? So you have to tie back to states' laws, whether or not a school district has authority in a given area, right? And they have authority. The legislature has given school districts authority for staff and board members to attend in-state and out-of-state professional development opportunities if they have a school purpose, right? So I think that has gotten lost, and that districts have not kept their eye on the ball of, is this a school purpose? So does it meet the authority that we have? And then two, is it, what about the, is it good bang for the buck? Because I assume that there's a finite amount of dollars out there. We're always saying that we don't pay teachers enough. We're always saying we don't, have the facilities that we like to have. So every dollar that we spend on professional development should be scrutinized, because those are dollars that could be spent in the classroom. Those are dollars that could go into teachers' paychecks. So you got to ask yourself, is a wine trip to Napa Valley worth more than money in a teacher's paycheck?
Well, you bring up a good point, because I've lived here for 20 years, and they come to us, the taxpayers, every year and say, we really need you to vote for this M&O. Our teachers need to be paid, and we need this and we need that. And then when I go through these consent agendas and find out that they're spending $3,500 on a trip, or whatever it might be, it angers me. It really frustrates me. And I don't think that people understand that this is happening. I really don't think that the people understand what's happening at their school board level. Do you feel that?
No, I feel 100% of that. First of all, most school board meetings are not, people don't watch them. People don't scrutinize them, and they certainly gloss over, the consent agenda. Now, not every district's like that. You have districts like Scottsdale and others where, people are very involved. They do follow them. But in most districts, that's not happening. And I think this is why this has been able to sort of flourish, is that the money is not being scrutinized by the public, and they're not having to justify it. I heard for 20 plus years, in a roundabout way, from superintendents and others that, hey, board members are not paid for their job. It's a volunteer gig, right? But you don't get to replace that volunteer gig with compensation for travel out of state and to go to 4-star resorts. I mean, that's not your compensation. The job has no compensation. When you go to those kind of events, they should be professional development opportunities to help you do your job better and serve your students better. If they don't do that, it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. And honestly, you start to ask the question, is this a gift of public funds, which our Constitution prohibits?
And that's an interesting point. Definitely an interesting point.